All right, so today we're going to be talking all about the neurocodes and we're going to be diving into some really juicy stuff with that. So I'm going to look up some questions here that we had on Patreon and then we can start there. Give me 2 seconds. And hopefully you guys have your own questions as well. That way we can get started and get that moving. Hold on. All right. So we're going to start off with Peter's question, which is, are the neurocodes a frequency within Antojai like Usui Reiki is? Okay, so and there's a lot here to this question, so I'm going to actually answer it in bits and pieces. So when you think about Antojai, you got to think of it like linearly and multidimensionally. So hold on, give me 2 seconds here too. All right, cool. You have to think of it linearly and multidimensionally. So when you're actually working with it, the linear version of it is kind of understanding that Antohai is like this one frequency that is the multitude of all possibilities. And within that frequency lies all these sub languages and dialects, and each dialect is tied to almost like a parallel universe or parallel structure of mindset, which allows you to bend reality in a different way. So if you kind of think about a mandala, like if you're at the center of the mandala and you kind of are in a kaleidoscope and you just shifted just a little bit and the whole entire picture changes, that is what each individual language inside of Antohai does. And that's why it's so powerful, because all you have to do is just learn the base standards of maybe your favorite languages in Antohai or your favorite keys in Antohai, and then kind of start playing around with the different languages. Like for instance, if you know the quantum Reiki and you know neurocodes, you could then take the keys that are portraying to similar chakras and kind of mix and match to find custom formulas that work for your personal path or maybe for another person. So it, in a way, yes, it is like a subset, but at the same time, it's not. It's also like Antohai itself, because when you look at the neurocodes, you're gonna look at the seventh key of the neurocodes is a key that is already in quantum Reiki. And then once you see that comparison right there, you're like, oh crap, there it's like the same system, just a different parallel of that system. So then that same key that is in both of those frequencies also exists in another parallel in Antohai. And it's kind of like you can switch, you can use the same key under under different precepts. And for instance, light of life in quantum Reiki, if you just understand quantum Reiki, is going to really work on the spectrum of life. Light of life in neurocodes is going to work more so on a light spectrum that's influencing what we understand to be life. So it's still targeting the same concepts, but totally different. And then when you step into Antojai alchemy, you then understand a totally different perception that gives you the full spectrum of understanding of what that key actually means. And then here, second question was said, under what sort of circumstances would one use, for example, Nura light of existence versus QR fire of life to heal the root chakra? Perhaps it is just that the key removes blockages differently. Yes. Okay. So great question. I love that you asked that question. So, for instance, if we're going to be using QR fire, right? You're going to use that for more. The way I really kind of cheat sheet it in my mind is, I think of the Kundalini, and I think about everything that's tied to the element of fire within a certain chakra spectrum. So like the root chakra is really tied to fire, like fertility is tied to those concepts of fire, sexual vitality, um, you know, when you don't have, for lack of a better term, a fire under your ass, you don't get anything done. You got to think of those elements of fire and how that attributes into the system. Light of existence, for instance, is changing the wave pattern of how the light photons in your reality structure what is understood to be your existence. So even though fires of life would change something like internally, which would then force you in a certain direction forward, which would be like, fire, light of existence changes elements around you and restructures them actively, because you're not just working on yourself either. When you're using fires of life is targeted towards you or your patient or whatever it is your intention is. When you're using light of existence, you're automatically forcing it into like not only healing your existence, but healing the existence of everyone else. And then it, almost you start moving matter in the form of light photons to make your life easy. So at the same time, not only are you bending matter, but you're also bending like the frequencies of energy, and then you're influencing at a subconscious level the collective mass to work with that influence to deliver what it is that you seek, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Did that make sense? And okay, cool. So those are the only questions that I have on the thread. You guys can definitely start asking me whatever.
Can you copy the Nora codes into the Alchemy, Antojai Alchemy, just like we did with QR and the other code?
Yeah. So like they're all stemming from Antojai. They're just a different target point. So like I said, like for instance, if you felt like fires was really good for the root chakra in your work, and then you wanted to take for your sacral, light of emotions, and then for your solar plexus, you could also keep changing things around. Like you can plug and play. In Antohai 2, there would be, for the solar plexus, for instance, mind. And mind would be a totally different like format. And you can almost like recipe, like create a recipe of your own that works. So at this point, like you can even start using like the chakra mirror to change some of the frequencies that you're going to be using as well. So when I unleash the next chapters of Chakra Mirror, we started touching up on a concept called the quantum ankh. The quantum ankh is essentially going to allow you to open a bunch of different doorways within like different, like you're going to turn all of your alchemy that I've taught you up till now into like a huge chemistry set, pretty much. And then you're going to be able to use the ankhs as templates to like make sound formulas that work with you, and they'll give you a different aspect to your reality, which is going to be really powerful. You can use the ankhs by themselves, or you can, like for instance, plug in the neurocodes into the ankh and then kind of experience a new aspect of reality on each one, then turn on the chakra mirror and then have another totally new perspective on what energy you're using. So like the next chapters that are coming out is going to be pretty heavy, because you're going to be walking into CM4, and then CM4 is going to have like this super ankh that's underneath it all, which is really powerful and opens up your heart to like the true cosmic meaning of why you're here and why you're doing things. So, did I answer your question?
Actually, you just confirmed it, because I had already been playing around with the Ankh and Antojai Alchemy CM1 and 2 and the time and heart that you gave me during our phone conversation, and was getting some really strange feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, with the quantum ankh, what you guys can do is like the ankh of life. You could do fire, life, quantum, and plug that in, and then all of a sudden you're triggering the levels of the ankh in a certain frequency. So, like, you could do that like alone, just hitting those three frequencies on yourself, or you can turn on the ankh, have the ankh kind of just do it at a base level. So like when you do it with the ankh, you're not stating anything. You're just saying like the chakra base itself is going to interact with the other formulas. And it kind of like, it almost like rotates your energy so you can meditate and open up certain concepts of yourself to understand like what's really going on in a day-to-day life. So it's very helpful. Also, the same concept is good for healing people. So when I had first started working with the ankh, was around the time that I was hanging out. I started hanging out with Rashawn, and I when he has this condition in his leg, it's like a tumor, and I put my leg on it, and my hand on it, and I touched it, and then I saw like an ankh form, and then I could see like through the ankh different colors of energy that were going through it. And depending, it was almost as though the Ankh of Life was telling me these colors on this certain section of the Ankh shouldn't be there. Like they should actually be this color instead. So from there, it would tell me almost like chemistry, like it's too hot because it was red. Go ahead and add some more blue from the throat chakra and like some of the alchemy keys from the throat. Bam. And I started working on that. And then the whole ankh eventually turned like green. And when it turned green, I just knew it was over. And he had told me that he was dealing with a lot of pain for a while up until the moment that I had healed them. And it took me all of like, I don't know, probably like 20 minutes to do. So it was really, really powerful. And that's one way you can use the ankh just by itself, or you could run the ankh through yourself as well. Um, you can run the ankh through your sexual practices. So the next time you're going to orgasm, set the intention that you're going to have it work as the ankh. And it's always going to come out of the back or the left. So, like, when you're going to orgasm, you feel the energy come from like the root chakra up to the heart chakra. And you can choose to rather have it come out of the left and around the top, like through the crown chakra, through on the right side back into the heart chakra and then back down, or have it come up to the heart chakra, come out of the back, over the front, into your heart chakra again, and then back down. So there's two different versions of it, and depending on, I don't know, what you seek, like one of them is going to be really nurturing, the other one's going to be like really in your face, bringing out something that you really need to understand, but it revitalizes you at the same time. Then let's say you take that same quantum ankh theory, and even if you're still in an orgasm and you're like, okay, well, I want neurocodes 1, 4, and 7 to turn on and work. When I have my orgasm, I want it to funnel through in the ankh sequence with these energies. You're gonna see like that opens up something totally new for you. Um, I've noticed that those practices open up your consciousness to like something very primordial that you can't even speak about. It's like this feeling like if you could turn your third eye into like the kundalini itself, for instance, and like at the kundalini everything's like sexual primordial energy, and like we all know what it feels like to like be in an area with people who have like high sexual energy, or being in the same room with someone who has like some sort of like sexual inclination. Like you can feel that energy in the room, and if depending on whether or not you want to like engage, your energy will subtly start engaging as well and turning on. So with that same kind of energy, um you when you start doing these practices, that kind of energy of kind of like this unknown desire of going with the flow but yet still knowing these things that are just not being spoken of turns that into your third eye. And then your third eye just can feel what people actually want. Your third eye can then like predict almost like the desires and the needs of another person before they're even capable of understanding what it is that they want for themselves.
So then it's normal to be able to see the auras on the Ankh when you're utilizing
Yeah, you could. Yeah, depending on the Ankh. When I do the Ankh of the heart, I see like almost like ribbons of like glittery strings. Like some of them are pink, some of them are like this teal color, some of them are silver, and some are even gold. But they're like these ribbons that are like everywhere, and they'll like flow right in front of me. Um, when I do Ankh of the Soul, that really brings out a lot of like purple energy, and I do see like a lot of ultraviolet light everywhere. Ankh of Life, depending on what it is that you're doing, if I've used the Ankh of Life, for instance, on a patient, I can definitely see um, like it's almost as though like their astral body stretches out their arms like that, and then they're doing the Ankh with their arms being spread out as the X, the rest of the lower body as like the handle, and then everything from the heart chakra up and around would be like the looping section. So you can have different effects with it. Also, like if you're going to be using like any of these modalities, I teach you like the base of what they mean, how they work with each other, where they can be applied. You know, I teach you all of that, but at the end of the day, I don't want you to get stuck to this mentality of just do it the way I taught you. Like I want you to know the base rules of it all, and that's just being like, okay, you know, like um we don't do this with it, but we do this with this. And through research, these elements have shown not to be as healthy. But past that, once you know those basics, go in some other direction. Think of it as art, and then use it as a form to create something new in your reality. One of the things that I really focus on is, you know, getting to know each key, whether it's like the neurocodes or like quantum Reiki or Antojai alchemy, you know each key. And then once you understand the base properties of those keys, force yourself to then work within those parameters. So, light of existence, I know affects all of existence. I know light of the mind is something that's really heavy on thought. So, what if I decide to heal someone who's coming to me with extreme depression? I'm going to use light of existence and light of the mind to change their condition of depression. Because depression, how does depression affect you on an everyday basis? Well, it really just hit your mind, it boggles your thoughts, and then like you feel in your root chakra like you're not safe, like you can't like make it through the day, maybe you don't want to even get up, you don't have any energy. You start looking at the symptoms of a condition and then being like, okay, like you reverse engineer by understanding what the properties of each key are and the properties of the chakras. That way, you know, when you're working with someone, you can then allow yourself to not only see the base formula almost instantaneously and kind of create new aspects of it, but then say the person comes in for that same issue and you're like, well, to for let's say you have 10 patients that come to you in the day. Well, the first patient you can do that baseline understanding that I told you. The second patient you can go ahead and say, all right, I understand the condition. Well, I'm going to use light of the mind to help me talk to this person, to pull out whatever is there inside of them. You can channel a frequency through your voice box and then allow it to kind of channel words in your mind and guide the conversation that way. You'll notice that by doing that, you'll use different vocabulary. You'll also be able to use like almost a different flow of understanding because you're not guiding the conversation, nor are you trying to like entirely decipher and figure out what to ask next. All you're doing is literally translating. Um, and that's a really good way to use a frequency because sometimes you have 10 patients and you notice that they're all going to have depression, or they're all coming in for depression, right? And each patient is going to get boring. Like, you don't want to use the same technique, because obviously too, like, each technique is not going to always work over and over and over and over again for each person. Some people are going to be more open to the energy, other people's are not. So you're going to have to like work within these spectrums of being fluid with understanding those same keys and how they apply in different areas. On a third patient, if a third patient were to come my way, then I would be like, okay, well, um, the third person, I would be like, let's see if I can just drag out all the things in their life and their existence that makes them want to feel depressed. Or I'm gonna pull out everything in her root chakra that is tied to depression as her existence. That's another way you could totally change it. And just the slight commands will also be like a new perception of reality that allows you to do something different, slightly different. And it can be so much more powerful. Once you kind of get the rhythm of that, then you want to kind of rather make notes of it mentally or on a piece of paper of what works and what doesn't work. Try it over and over and over again. And then that's how you can customize your own alchemy with all the formulas.
Okay, thank you. One other thing, can you? I'm assuming you can. I've done it, but I haven't uh, felt anything from it. But I've tried the light of existence, light of emotions, and light of light on the radionics paper machine, but I haven't noticed a response. So, have you ever tried it?
Yes. So with the radionics machine, there's something interesting about it that I've been working with the other researchers. And basically, like, a radionics machine ultimately comes down to your intention, right? So like a paper machine, like if you were to on each frame of those paper machines, you wire what you want it to do, and then you can put in what energies you want to fuel those concepts. If you don't put an energy behind it, then you're fueling it with your own life force and essence. Um, so when I first started working out on this, I started using just all three of them, and the ones that didn't have some sort of frequency running in the background drew from my liver and from my kidneys, and I could feel it, and it hurt, and I couldn't understand why it was hurting. And then when I made a comment about it, someone brought it up and it was like, oh, it must be the radionics machines that you're using, because there were two of them that didn't have anti frequencies running in the background. Now, depending on what it is that you're putting, like if you're putting your intention to be the onto high frequency to always hit you, then that's a different story. If you're using the onto high frequency to fuel the machine, that's another story. So which one are you using?
I'm using the uh, talismans to fuel the machine for healing on someone else.
Okay, yeah, so that you're healing, you to fuel the machine for healing on someone else. Okay, are you writing the intention as to what you want to heal?
Yes, the person, the heal, and the talismans that I'm using, I stack them.
And hold on, and like they don't they haven't been feeling any effects?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't gotten a response back from them yet. I was just verifying that whether or not you had tried it and what you got.
Okay. That's what I had gotten. I have used the frequencies on myself as well. I've noticed that they kind of work in the background of like my everyday life through a radionics machine. Even through the mechanical one, it kind of like works in the background when I was messing around with it. I stopped using the mechanical one because after having that like liver incident, kidney thing, I was just kind of like, I gotta recharge before I mess around with this. Um, but the radionics machine is quite interesting because we came down to understand that like it's ultimately just a perception of your mind. There are certain, if you read this a book by Yogananda, he talks about these spiritual guru masters that could bend reality in these all these really miraculous ways. But they told Yogananda what it was that they actually could do, but when a patient would come in, they would tell the patient a totally different story. So when a patient would come in, they would be like, "Oh, I have this really ancient brew that I've had forever. It's been passed down for 3,000 years. It's really what has all the magical powers behind it. I'm gonna do this incantation, which like turns on the power of the medicine inside of it, and then poof, you're gonna be healed." But in all reality, it was the yogi that was doing all the work. The medicine, the thing that the people were drinking probably was just like regular water or something else like that. So then, oops. So then, when they're drinking the thing and he does his power, they're not putting their. It's hard for some people to put their belief in a man, but it's easier for them to put it in a magical potion. So like that's the same concept that comes back into the radionics. Like for some people, using a machine gives you the ability to perceive like you're amplifying what it is that you're putting out already. So in alchemy, as analog as it sounds and as like probably like silly as it sounds, for some alchemists, it is really beneficial for them to use something like a radionics machine or like even stones and stuff like that because those elements are making them feel stronger with their intention to create something. Ultimately, when it comes back down to it, like the radionics machine is only being fueled by intention, and the intention is coming from the alchemist who's setting the parameters for it. So it's really no different than you actually staying there and meditating. It just allows your mind to even reconstruct this thing where you're like, oh, I'm going to turn it on and leave it on for 4 hours, and I don't have to be like meditating for 4 hours. Does that make sense?
Yes, almost like just being from one dimension to the next. Yes, we're all here, we're all at this time, but I need to multitask. So that's what we're going to do.
Yes, totally, totally. And like with time, as you start really practicing with Antojai alchemy, um, and you really fuse with the keys and you understand how each like combination of language changes how you see reality slightly differently, you'll be able to do it automatically. So for me, the radionics machine doesn't really work. Like it works if I have a patient in my room, um, and like I turn it on, I can feel it fill in the room. But when I was doing it for you guys, I noticed that it was hitting like everyone, but it was mostly focusing on the people who needed it most and not like elevating the group constantly, just kind of like keeping everyone at a plateau. So when I heal people, especially if I have like multiple clients, like I'm healing all the time. Like I never shut off my energy because even when I sleep, I'm not sleeping. So it's like my consciousness can be in a bunch of different places at one time doing something to a bunch of different people. And I'm still there in live time, witnessing every little aspect of it and I can recollect all of it. And the moment that I call it up, like you'll remember it and be like, oh yeah, I totally forgot. Like yesterday, for instance, was one of those things where I told one of my patients, um, like 30 days ago, we're gonna meditate every day for 21 days in astral space. And I was like, because you need to get over your ex and you're not having this healthy lifestyle. And he was like, okay, okay, okay. Well, what he was like, he was kind of like he's okay with energy work, but he's sort of like agnostic in his mind on like if it actually all works exactly how people say it works. So I said, just go with the flow, and you'll see what ends up happening. So the whole entire like a full 30 days go by. He calls me yesterday, and then he's like, "Oh, well, I don't really remember us hanging out or anything like that. Like I thought I would remember having an experience." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Yeah, well, I remember it. I can tell you exactly what happened." And then I told him, "You have this thing where." We were hanging out in this one dimension where it's full of clouds, and you were wearing all green, and we were sitting on these clouds, and there were like sofas, and you were telling me all about like how you couldn't deal with like the suffering of the world. And like I went on this huge list of things that he had said to me that night. And he was like, was like the dimension XYZ and XYZ? And I'm like, yeah. He was like, yeah, I do remember being there. He's like, but I don't remember talking. He was like, I do remember that the clouds were like sofas, like really soft sofas. And he was like, and I was talking to a being, but it wasn't you. And I was just like, it didn't look like me, like you know me. I was like, it's probably like my astral version that you were talking to, and you weren't even aware of it. And then it kind of like all clicked for him. So that's exactly how you'll all be after a while, but you have to let yourself absorb, for instance, like multiple keys of like the root chakra. So like light of existence, fires of life. And then eventually you'll learn like other keys that are higher alchemy like that. Once you understand the root chakra under all these different premises, plus the premise that you grew up like learning, like whatever you automatically learned on your path about regular chakra work that humanity has documented, you'll be able to do stuff like that where like all of a sudden you could be healing someone in like this dimension and applying like a bunch of stuff to their physical body, and then all of a sudden you're in another dimension and you're having this profound experience healing like their childhood or something like that. Also, you guys, I'm not sure if this is gonna cap out at 6:40. If it does, I will relaunch this, and I'll just post a new code because I wanted to go for an hour, and I'm not sure how this works yet. I think it said it can only go for like 45 minutes, so we'll see what happens.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I guess to like kind of finish off that idea too about using proxies, um, there's nothing wrong with using proxies. Like if a radionics machine works for you and it makes you feel comfortable to be able to do that, great. But ultimately, I want you guys to understand something that I guess I should have like I feel like I would have if I would have understood this sooner, I probably wouldn't have gone on such a spending spree over my lifetime. But I basically thought to myself, like, if the radionics machine is just like that, and I know that I can heal stronger than the radionics machine just normally, like, imagine all these other, even your stones. Your stones have, even though your stones are primordial frequencies in reality, right? Like a huge obelisk, like a rose quartz or something, that has its frequency in reality, and it's very much so real. But ultimately, it's still a stone until the moment that you recognize that it's more than a stone. It has a vibration behind it that can do something. Up until you have that moment, it's just a rock. And when you have that consciousness applied to it, ultimately, could you not just be one with the rose quartz frequency at any moment without actually having the stone in your hand? Like, and it's just kind of like when you kind of understand that, then you get to this point where it's like, well, it's nice to have them because they make you feel more comfortable, but it's not necessary.
Actually, yeah, that's basically what I use: the talismans, the radionics machines, everything that you taught me up through Antojai Alchemy as reminders of my capabilities. Not that they are doing it, that I am doing it, but I have to look back and go, oh yeah, blah blah blah. Oh yeah, Omega. Oh yeah. So that I've got those reminders.
Yeah. One of the things that I have definitely learned, um, doing a ton of psychedelics, honestly, is that, how do I explain this? When you do psychedelics in shamanic culture, you're taught never to relinquish your mind. Like, it's not a tool that takes you for a ride. It's a tool that you use to go on a voyage, and you're always in control of this boat. So American culture, or like just like non-shamanic culture in general, that doesn't know about that spiritual consciousness, there's a tendency to just take like a psychedelic and just go on this wild ride and just let it take you wherever, which can be awesome. It can be magical, but sometimes people end up in really dark places and then they wonder like why that ever happened to them, because you never set an intention behind what you're actually stepping into. Um, and one of the things that I've learned with psychedelics, doing them for a while, is like I started off doing mushrooms, and mushrooms really taught me heavy. Well, I started off doing LSD, but LSD not until I was like in my early 20s did I start understanding how LSD actually worked. It was mushrooms that started showing me that, like, okay, you've touched all these plateaus inside of yourself. Like, if you've been able to heal just one really profound PTSD file in your system that's related to um, anger or child abuse, then you know what the vibration of anger and child abuse is. And you can use that understanding, because you've touched it once already, to find similar files over and over and over again until you delete whatever is there. The trick to it is not only being able to find the frequency, but when you find it, delete it, let it go, move on, and be real with it. Some people will find it, visit it, think they get over it, move on to something else, and then when they try to do the whole entire process all over again, they start off from square one, because they were somehow being inauthentic with themselves in the curing process. um and then, wait, hold on, where was I going with that? That was really juicy. We were talking about the inauthentic process, diving, oh, the formulas. Okay, LSD. So then LSD ended up teaching me that the only frequency you ever really have to remember is how your mind feels when you're free from all of the perceptions that you've been programmed to have. So then that kind of like really, that's what really has led me to understand Antojai, because when you use Antojai in people, especially like those, the better you get with it, like you end up giving people who have had an LSD experience get up off a table and be like, oh my God, I'm tripping right now. Like everything looks so lucid, everything looks so crazy, because you're triggering those same centers of the brain, which you let them go from everything that they understood to be baseline reality. And that's exactly what LSD will do to you. Ayahuasca taught me how to let go of pain, and like how to let go of my own like restrictions of ideas of myself. So like every time you, and then ayahuasca was also able to show me this new trick that I did with rape, which was like, um I met this Ecuadorian shaman, and she showed me like all these different forms of rape, and I can take a rape, hit it, and they each one's got a different blend. And it's basically shamanic snuff. Every time I hit a rape, I can then transmit the frequency of the rape and the intention that each tribe used to create that rape as a direct healing frequency towards a person. And it's what's really cool is like I've tested them, and each one has like their own little name, or like one's like goddess, one's like divine union, one of them's warrior, jungle magic, and I haven't told people what it is that I'm doing. I'm just like, hey, can I test out this new frequency that I have? Yeah, sure. Okay, let me know what you feel when I send it to you, and I'll hit the rape, and then they'll like if it's jungle magic. Wow, well, I see a leopard, and I feel like I'm laying down on a thing of leaves, and I feel really comfortable, and like they'll start describing exactly what is the intention behind the rape frequency. And all I'm doing is being the conduit of the intention of the tribe that created it. So it's like I'm almost sitting with like a group of indigenous ancestors across the world who created like this rape thing. And we're all sitting here healing this person through that frequency. Um, so like that's kind of like the same thing you want to do with like any of the alchemy you use. That's something I've used is kind of like, what if I pump it into water and drink it and then try to summon energy that I have coursing through me? What if I make a tonic and the tonic is infused for 4 weeks with a certain alchemy key, and then when I take it, I see, okay, when I took the tonic by itself, okay, yeah, I can definitely feel like light of existence or light of the mind is like running through me. Okay, well, let me take it again once this is out of my system. And while it's running through me, I'm going to then summon light of existence and see what happens now that there's two amplifiers on top of that. Um, I've gone as far as to record myself, and like in a recording is like, okay, Axel, here we are sitting down, we're both gonna like summon light of existence, and we're gonna do XYZ, bam 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 bam. And then while I'm doing that experience, like I'll record the first reel knowing that I'm sitting with myself in a different mental time space, and then when I listen to it again, I keep just layering it. Every time I layer a new meditation onto it, especially on that Loopy app, that would be great. Because on one reel you could do like the first meditation and then record on top of the second reel. And sometimes what I'll do is like, if on the first reel I said, okay, root chakra, light of existence, on the second reel I would say the same thing, recording myself, or like add in fires of life on the second reel, complementing those variables over and over and over again. And it's kind of like you start learning how these fragments of you and multidimensional space are all in this present moment because time doesn't exist. And it really changes even how you understand the frequency, because your brain naturally wants to assume that every time you tap into a frequency, you're kind of tapping it from zero, right? You know that it's constantly running in the background anyway, but every time you touch it, you're somewhat starting from zero, is what your mind naturally will go to. Doing this kind of practice, you'll be able to see for yourself, like, oh, okay, well, I've been touching this frequency every time I've ever touched this frequency, whether it was 4 years ago or 20 years from now, all those fragments of me are touching this frequency right now. And if you can let your mind like really absorb that, then you can then start talking to yourself through that frequency on multiple points in linear time and gather information that you otherwise could not gather from the future. And then you can, the more times you do that and the more you practice that, that's kind of also a different way of quantum leaping with the same frequency. And you'll notice that every time you do it, if let's say like 20 years from now, that's who you're talking to, and they're transmitting information that something in their lives is not like resonating the way you want to, you can alter slightly and communicate more and more and more with the ultimate parallel of yourself that's in the future, which is technically right now, that has your ultimate manifest. And as you grow with alchemy, it's a tool that then eventually turns into like a state of being, then eventually turns into like a state of like complete unexplainable existence, and then from there it'll go somewhere beyond understanding physical words. So that's kind of like how you want to play around with the alchemy, like be inventive, be explorative, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the best way I can describe it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm.
Do you always transmit this stuff telepathically when you're doing the video? You just gave me one hell of a blast.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is like the keys channel through me, and that's why it's kind of annoying to me sometimes because I feel like I'm rambling, because you can't really explain infinity. Like if you live with me, like you have seen me at points in my life where I'm channeling so much about alchemy and I'll try to explain it to somebody and then eventually always comes back, it loops on itself, and I'm just like, wait, I'm starting all over again from zero, oh my god. And I've just learned that I have to almost tell the keys at times where it's like, okay, you've said it enough. Like we can't keep talking about it because you're just gonna sound redundant at this point. Because the frequency basically will talk to you in layers, so you try to understand the frequency in a specific way. Like, so it'll tell you like version A of itself, then version B, C, D, E, E, until like you all the way you've absorbed so many frequencies that you just can't like deny what it's trying to say to you. But then that can also be really intense at times. So yes, I do channel them almost all the time, and that's why it's really hard for me to re-record material that I recorded the first time, because I tend to record everything when they're like in heat. They're like, yo, I got this message, you got to put this out right now. And I'm like, oh my god, okay, fine. And like there's some courses and stuff that I've been working on forever because I just channel it here and there. Like today, this morning, I was channeling the new Antojai manual, and it's basically got all these formulas from like the Emerald tablets, from the Book of Ra, from the Book of Creation, the Book of Light, the Book of Illumination, taking like a snippet from each one and explaining how all of Antojai plugs into these same formulas. And what's crazy is that a lot of these books I found way after I had documented everything I understood about Antojai, and it's like it's undeniable how it's so plugged into so many different concepts of reality. It's ridiculous.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does
You were
anybody?
transmitting so much heat that my wife has to go cool down. She's got to go outside and cool off.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, when I went to Sedona, my partner and I went to this Ascended Master meditation channeling thing, and I felt totally calm. Like I was sitting there, I could see the masters had come into this guy, and like they were standing right next to him, and they were talking. I'm like, okay, because sometimes like people say, oh yeah, I can channel the Ascended Masters, and I'm like, I have like really high standards for that. Like, if you say you can channel the Ascended Masters, I'm expecting just random people who live in Adonai to show up and start talking to you. Like, that's what I expect. If you're saying that you channeled certain Ascended Masters, that's different. Like, I still respect that, but there's kind of like a broad spectrum of like how you could say that statement. So this guy, when he said it, like I had that skepticism a little bit, and he was sitting down, and like for real, like he was like me, like he was just like, yo, who wants to have a lesson today? And there, like two people just showed up and were like, yeah, we'll just talk to them today. And there was like this really powerful experience. So then I'm sitting there just like, oh wow, like yeah, I've never talked to them before, I'm really interested to hear what they have to say. And my partner's sitting next to me, and he just starts sweating, and he starts getting hot, and he starts getting nauseous, and I'm looking at him like, are you okay? Like, what's wrong with you? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I feel like I'm gonna faint. And he got up, and when he stepped outside, I had channeled that like he couldn't handle the frequency of the masters that the guy was channeling into the room, and it made him feel like really nauseous, so he couldn't go back into the meditation, which was really interesting. But yeah, that's not the first time that's happened. There's certain masters that talk to me sometimes, and they make me feel like I'm being spun around. Like Esther Hicks is one of those people. Like she'll speak, and sometimes I feel like she's just twirling me on one of those like whirly whirl things from your playground sets. Like you're just put in the middle, and she's like, "Ah, go faster, go faster." So
Yeah, that's what happened here. Because, I've done all the alchemy and almost everything you've got waiting on Antojai too. And my wife is still back. I'm helping her work on Chakra Mirror 1 and 2. And she just completed the Grand Master, and she was just getting totally overloaded with the discussion that we were having.
yeah. Does anybody have any other questions? I want to make this juicy for you guys. I can't make it juicy if you guys don't interact with me. I guess I'll like. Let me see what else we can talk about with the neurocodes. Another thing is like the neurocodes are not just healing codes. That's one of the things that I've been waiting to kind of like share with you guys. There are healing frequencies, and then there are frequencies that bend reality, and then there are frequencies that can be used for more than just both of those spectrums. The neurocodes are actually weapons as well. And if you have a problem with that, like you don't have to use it for that concept. But the neurocodes came to me when I was channeling my Atlantean lifetime. And my Atlantean lifetime is all about light warriorship and how to use light frequencies to um, like basically kill negative entities from our reality. And when I first started really reading it, and there was it's kind of like reading my own notes that I've left to myself. It's like reading a journal. I was reading it and explaining to myself on how to kill negative spirits in this reality. And at the very end of it all, I described to myself like there's no way you can kill anything because energy is not lost or destroyed ever. It's just retransmuted. So if you're actually deleting a negative essence from the environment, you're retransmuting it to another parallel of Earth where it exists, and you're transitioning yourself to another parallel of Earth where it does not exist. So it's not really on from your perspective. It looks like you're disintegrating it or destroying it or something, but you're actually just relocating it. Um, but also the warriorship concept comes into it because it has to be like no mercy. Um, just because some spirits, some renditions out there are gonna be sneaky and they're gonna try to make sure that you don't complete a task, especially if they know that you're trying to boot them out of a system. The neurocodes. I had this kid the other day. This guy, he came in with a kid attached to his spirit, and when he was sitting down, the kid's spirit launched at me because it knew that I was gonna go heal him, and it made me super super nauseous. I ended up using a light code basically to like light of existence to basically create a frequency of light that was like a barrier between me and the spirit so it couldn't touch me a second time. Because when it originally touched me, it made me feel really, really like blah, like gross. Another thing is like the neurocodes are, think about them, they're light, right? So anything that someone's dealing with when it comes down to like extreme shadow work, like you can really make a dent. Think about it even further than that. Like if you know QR and you're healing somebody tells you, I'm having insomnia, I'm having a lot of dark dreams, like I've gone through a lot of trauma in my life, or I don't know what it is, but I always tend to date the same person and like it always ends out the same way. That's all stuff in your shadow. Like that's all legit stuff. So what can you do? Well, you can set the intention that you're going to take uh the shadow and you're going to expand the shadow and you're going to step into the shadow like you were stepping into a new dimension. When you step into the shadow dimension of that person, you can then turn on the neurocodes. From there, nothing can, like, once you're in the shadow itself and you blast it with light, where's it going to run? Like, there's nowhere it can run. It has to be, like, rather confronted, obliterated, or retransmuted into another section of reality, or like the person's going to have some sort of detox that forces them to kind of, you know, cry or shake or something. So, what's another good way to do it? So that's one way you can use it as a weapon. Another way that I've used it is I've been able to isolate someone's subconscious with it. So I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna create like I'll let my mind create like a cell of energy, and I'll like almost like convince the subconscious to walk in a certain area, and then it gets trapped in the cell. So then it's a cell of light. It can't go past it unless it's willing to get past whatever frequency is there. So like let's say the cell is made out of like light of the mind. and like the person's subconscious is like really heavy with like anxiety and depression and paranoia. So I put the subconscious inside of this cell. You can get out of the cell whenever you feel like it, like whenever you want. You're only in that cell until you deal with whatever you need to deal with. And basically, like it's really when they start stepping through that energy line, they have no choice but to disintegrate the pattern that's there. And that's a way of using like warriorship, using a weapon, but necessarily it's not a weapon either. Like I'm not forcing you to do anything but to choose a higher reality. If you don't want to choose a higher reality, you're going to be uncomfortable either way. But now you're going to be uncomfortable in a totally different way that you didn't expect to make you feel great. And it's almost like you start changing the dynamic with like your relationship with like the shadow, the subconscious, secrets. That's another thing that I've done it with. I've been having I most recently had an experience where I was feeling like these really negative vibes and I couldn't tell where they were coming from. I just knew it was coming from somebody that I knew that was really close to me. Um, I was meditating, and then I just kind of felt like I used the sixth key of the neurocode, and I was like, okay, well, it's this will show me what I'm missing. And I turned it on while I was going to sleep. I fell asleep. I fell into this dream where I saw this person turning into a werewolf in my dream. And then I instantly, in the middle of the dream, I'm not scared or anything. I was like, I kind of feel like this. I was like, I think I'm dreaming. And I was like, no, this is a little bit too like vivid for a dream. I was like, I think I'm in a past life or something. I was like, but really werewolves? And I saw like this person turning into the werewolf, and I wasn't terrified or anything. And then I heard werewolf totem. And I was like, okay. I was like, so this is some sort of like totem meaning. I woke up, I instantly looked it up, and it was an omen telling me that there was someone essentially using alchemy behind the scenes to try to like mess with me. And it was somebody that I knew. And I was like, okay, so that's why I've been feeling weird about it. So like that neuro key not only highlighted that, but then I was like, okay, I can't just come out and call somebody out on it. Like I have to like somehow let it be known publicly that this is working. So then I use the fifth neuro key, which is light of authenticity. And that basically forces the truth to come out from wherever it is, especially because that one's still connected to your throat chakra. So light of authenticity, shadows of life, they're kind of like both mix in. And if you've seen my IG series on throat chakra alchemy, you can then start seeing like how certain keys plug into certain areas. Um, it was cool because I turned that on and I was like, okay, light of authenticity, like I want you to somehow make this public to like, if not me, someone else, so that I know that I'm not like making it up in my mind. Because especially if you know a ton of alchemists, and then all of a sudden like you suspect that one of your alchemist friends that you may know is like doing something weird, like it's kind of like a hard pill to swallow. You know what I mean? Like you don't really just want to like jump the gun on that. So I was like, if it's true, let the person become like available, let it be seen somewhere, and let somebody tell me through the grapevine. So that's exactly what ended up happening. Like light of authenticity went into reality and basically not orchestrated or manipulated this person, but it just everything that this person did was not working to their advantage on how they wanted it to work. So like they started talking, to instance, for like to Micah. They went to go talk to Micah, and then they said all these things about how they wanted to get some result out of me that I wasn't going to give them. And then Micah was kind of like, what? And Micah came over and told me about it. And he was like, there's something weird. I feel like this person's kind of like up to no good. Something gave me the impression that they were doing something with alchemy. So now I'm like, okay. So then, of course, like Micah and I roll in the same circles. So um, another alchemist that you guys don't know knows this person as well, and kind of like started telling me the same thing, that they were having these really weird dreams about this person kind of like doing something to their subconscious, and it was happening for multiple nights in a row, and like this particular alchemist didn't know why he was losing sleep over it. He thought it was his imagination. So then I'm like, okay, here's like that trend. Light of authenticity is telling me like it's not just me that she like that this person's been doing it to. Like it's multiple people that this person's been doing it to. So it was kind of like very powerful. Like remember, like concepts of light, like you can't hide the shadow if you're using light. You can't you can use the concepts of the shadow to highlight a truth. You can use the concepts of the shadow to make something be subtly spoken into reality. You can use the light to dismantle, destroy something that's integral to your personality that doesn't work for you anymore. You can use light to declutter. You can use light to purify. You can use light to amplify. Like when you use um, light of the ethers on your heart chakra, that amplifies how you really feel with magic. A lot of times we work with magic and we're like, oh, it's kind of like this far out concept. I know I can do it here and there, and I know it works kind of sort of, and I feel comfortable with it, but there's always like something inside of you that throttles you from saying like, yes, I can do it, and I'm vibrating all the time on it, and nothing is better than this, and this is where I'm gonna stay for the rest of my life. Like light of the ethers opens up those channels to say like, okay, like yes, like I deserve to be a magical being. I deserve to be in this flow of like having all these magical experiences. Yeah, light of emotions disintegrates emotions. Light of existence, you purify existence, and like existence, like these keywords too. Before I shut off this workshop, the keywords that go behind every key are just concepts that you should work inside of them. So like if you need to get broader concepts on the mind, then go ahead and like go on a dictionary and write existence. What are other like verbs like a thesaurus? What are other words and verbs that correlate with existence? And then all of a sudden you have all these different slight precepts that you can use light of existence for, or light of the mind for. Then think about like sit down and think about how certain aspects of your life, when you're angry, where do you really feel that? In your gut, and that's a lot of emotion, right? So then sometimes anger can make you feel like you want to vomit or something. That's light of emotions. um, if you feel heartburn hurts you in your heart center. So like, and that's always coming from your gut, so it would make sense that if you're if and this is the thing. Okay, so sometimes you have heartburn, it goes up to your heart. Sometimes you have heartburn, it goes all the way up to your throat. If you're having heartburn that goes up to your heart, you would know it's coming from your stomach, so then it's due light of emotions. It's going up to your heart, that's where it's stopping, light of the ethers. Or it's going all the way up to your throat, so then it's due light of the ethers and light of authenticity with light of emotions. And all of a sudden you'll see that you start understanding how base chemicals of reality, when they go off center, they cause something like heartburn inside of the system. A lot of times when you use these frequencies, whether you want the person to completely be like out of it or you want them to be engaging with you, some people need to be talking to you when they're going through these keys. Like they need to get it off their chest. Other people, the last thing they need to do is talk, because all they do is talk. So you just want them to get to, shut up, lay down, experience the energy, love themselves. So everybody good? Any other questions? I think Marcella was gonna ask something. Oh, okay. Got it. Um, and then how did you guys feel about this lecture? Did you guys like this? Did I fill in the questions you guys needed? Okay, we got Good ones from Bert. Good one from Marcella. I can't see Galaxy 10 or John or Peter or Rudy. I wonder who Galaxy 10 is. Ooh, anonymous.
So you got a thumbs up from me too, Miss Peter.
Okay, cool, awesome. See.
And a thumbs up from me too.
Yay. Yeah, so like for is that Galaxy 10? Who's Galaxy 10? Oh, I don't know. I think.
No, this was Bert's wife, Aisha.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah, it shows up different on like it shows up like there's a different device. Like I can see Bert's and then I can see like a Galaxy 10. So the next workshop that we're gonna do is next Saturday. Are you guys feeling next Saturday, or do you want to just kind of like do it in the week?
We're good with Saturday.
Okay.
Galaxy is Lindsay. She put it in the chat.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, so and how about Sundays? Do Sundays work for you guys at this time as well?
Sundays are perfect. Yes. Sundays are good too.
Okay. All right, cool.
Sundays work better for me.
All right, cool. Do you guys like the length of our webinars, or do you guys want them to be like? Because I'm trying to design like whether I do 2 different days or maybe I do like one really long segment, like 1 hour is about one subject, 1 hour is about another subject, or like 1 hour is with me, 1 hour is with another master, like, or would you guys like to have like spread out kind of workshops around the week?
We're open to whatever you decide.
Okay, so what I'll start doing is for sure. Then if Sunday works for everybody, we'll for sure have a Sunday webinar, and those definitely work for me. And then the next one then we'll do on next Sunday is going to be all about telepathy. And I want you guys to kind of be ready for it because we've been playing that telepathy game, and some of you guys have been really, really amazing, but you've also been really wrong. So I can't wait to actually like share some of like the stuff that you guys have come up with, and kind of like you guys can see. So I want to practice telepathy via distance, and then I'm going to show you guys how to take that telepathy and start doing the astral traveling a little bit more, because a lot of times people believe that telepathy is one of those things that you have to do in person, right? Because that's just how it works. It's not. Like telepathy is just like astral travel, and if you kind of get the gist of telepathy, then you'll be like, oh well, it wasn't that difficult to play around with that. Let's do the astral travel, and that'll be a little bit of a training for you to try to get that grand prize, because we have 2 grand prizes still running. One of them is if you get the right number, shape, and color, I will get you a personalized cloud deck, and I will show you exactly how to wire those cloud decks to Antojai frequencies and use them the way that I use them. And then the other one is 3 one-on-one lessons with me if you get the other number right. So, lots of goodies in there. Sending you so much love. Thank you for being a part of this community. I'm going to be posting this up for you guys on our webcast so you can review it, and I will see you next Sunday.